Well, we'll see. Pick your poison, I guess, is what it's going to turn down to. Listen, I know you're running low on time. You got to go some other places here, but there's one more thing. This is from DropSat News. Iran's deputy foreign minister made some comments yesterday that there's several things that are key takeaway from Tehran's strategic position in terms of this war. And I thought some of them are really important here. And I want to just kind of get your view on them. Some of them, like here, Iran says Hormuz will never return to the pre-war status quo. And that's something you've been saying for quite a while here. But this one here, this aspect of it, I wonder if you could discuss this, because now control of the Hormuz is now considered a part of Iran's national security. What is the implication of making that statement?
Okay, well, first I want to point out that I think everyone should watch this interview or read it. I think it's important, and I think you brought. I mean, discussing this is key, and everyone, in order to understand the situation, people, if they read this, I think they'll have a better appreciation of where things stand with Iran. Second of all, this is the deputy foreign minister. So remember, in the West, again, the nonsense that we're always hearing, that there are factions in Iran, and they're the guards, the hardliners, and then there are the moderates, like the foreign ministry people, and which is all nonsense. In Iran, as we discussed before, there's a Supreme National Security Council. All the key figures in Iran's political and military establishment and security establishment are involved, and they make decisions, and the leader, when he approves, that's policy. So the guards don't fire missiles at anyone without authorization. The army does not fire drones at anyone without authorization. The foreign ministry doesn't negotiate without authorization. They're all different branches of the same system. They're different state. So this is the foreign ministry. This is the so-called moderates. What he's saying is that, look, the Strait of Hormuz, we're not going back to where it was 5 months and 2 days ago. It is now going to be run by Iran. Now, Oman, we can do it with them, but we have to be involved in the entire process. In other words, there won't be like one route for Oman, another route for Iran. No. Why? Because this is a security issue for us now. We've gone through war. This is not before. This is not 6 months ago. The United States has waged war against us with the help of regional countries and, of course, the Israeli regime. So we're not going to allow the Strait of Hormuz to be what it was before. We're going to have full control. We can either do it with Oman or without Oman. It's up to them. So I think this is key. So right now, what Trump is trying to do is trying to say, no, the Iranians cannot have control. And he actually said in the interview that it's not just about security, it's also financial. In other words, he said, yes, we're going to take fees. And because some people sometimes say, well, this is about security, less about fees. He said it very clearly. It's about security and it's about fees. Those countries, this I'm adding. He didn't say this, right? I don't remember him saying this. Those countries, the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Kuwaitis, the Qataris, the Bahrainis, they waged war against us. They helped Americans destroy our infrastructure, kill our kids. They have to pay. And so I'm not saying this is going to be called compensation, but those fees are going to come from these countries. These countries waged war against Iran. True, Trump was the guy behind it. Netanyahu was the guy behind it. But at the end of the day, without these 5 countries, the war would not have been able to carry out.
And so let me go to the next point here. I know you're running real short on time. There's 2 more.
No, I'm good. I still have a few minutes.
Okay, so you said Iran is prepared to keep the strait closed, even if it, or he said rather, even if it means war resumes. The deputy foreign minister rejected restoring the southern shipping lane, which is what you just said there. But I think it's important for people to understand this, that the Iran is, according to him, will keep the strait closed until either we acknowledge it, or even if it means going back to war. But there is no opening the strait without Iran's permission. That sounds what he's saying, right?
That's right. I mean, to be clear, to be very, if we're going to be precise, some ships do go through, but they go through the Iranian corridor. They're very limited in number. It's nowhere near where it was 3 weeks ago, and nowhere near at all where it was 6 months ago. So a handful of ships are going through a day. I think like today, a couple of 2 or 3 Japanese ships went through, a few Chinese ships, those countries that have had nothing to do with the war, but they're very few in number. So there will be no normalization of the Strait of Hormuz until these issues are resolved. And remember, I mean, all Trump had to do was to implement the MOU. And by now we'd be in month 2. Shipping through the Strait would have been normalized. But he pushed us back into this catastrophic situation. And this is the 3rd time he does it. I mean, excluding the 12-day war, which was also catastrophic. But he started this war, created this situation. Then there was the ceasefire after 40 days. He could have implemented the ceasefire. And what happened? Netanyahu went and carpet bombed Lebanon and prevented the ceasefire from taking hold. And so the Iranians did not allow shipping to normalize. And then later on, Trump imposed that siege. So we could have had it over after 40 days of war. So we had 2 months of siege, as we all remember, and then we had the MOU finally. And how did the MOU come about? Israel, again, bombed Beirut. Iran was about to strike, and then Trump said, no, I'll give these concessions, let's get it over with. So he knew how fragile the global economy was. So we had the MOU, and then instead of implementing it, he starts trying to be, smart and cheat Iran and try to undermine it. Well, the Iranians, they knew what he was trying to do, and they blocked it. And so now we're back to a critical situation, and it's getting worse by the day.
And one of the things President Trump also said yesterday, and maybe again this morning, is that our blockade is going to force concessions. But your deputy foreign minister says Iran will not be forced into concessions. And he said the naval blockade cannot force Iran into negotiations. Iran can supply itself through alternative trade corridors. And I think that that's something that too few people understand. And if I can just kind of show the viewers here, maybe you can explain why that is. But I mean, just looking at a map, it's not that hard. There's the Caspian Sea up here. There's all these land borders over here. A lot of places that we have literally no ability to block anything off at all. How can Iran survive if we keep this part blocked off?
I mean, it's clear that the blockade hurts. There's no doubt about it. But Iran has 15 neighbors. Iran is a huge country. It's not the size of the United States, but it's the size of Western Europe. And it's bigger than, I think, France, Britain, Germany combined. And as you rightly pointed out, it's mountainous. It has a huge population, well over 90 million. How is anyone going to surround it? You have the Russians, who are neighbors to the Caspian Sea. You have Azerbaijan, you have Armenia, you have Turkmenistan, you have Afghanistan, you have Pakistan, you have Turkey, and you have Iraq, and then you have the Persian Gulf. It's not going to work. But also, more importantly, the Iranians are fighting a war for survival. And we saw the people come to the streets. They have, for this funeral, they have popular support. And this is a war for survival. On the other hand, we saw the 2 months of siege. It was Trump who had to back down and say that I don't want to be a Herbert Hoover. So this is just the same thing all over again. He had to accept the MOU because things were getting bad. Well, we're pretty close to bad right now. It's worse than it was when he said that today. Today, it's worse than then. So, Trump is not going to win. This is not a war that the Iranians are going to concede. The Iranians are going to move on until Trump ultimately capitulates, or we just go into global economic depression, and then we live in a very different world.
We do. And the last point here, President Trump, I mean, everything he has at least said publicly is all about Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. That's what he said in 2025. That's what he said last February. It's what he said this morning with Trey Yingst. He keeps on saying that over and over. And the biggest thing on this deputy foreign minister's comments here on the nuclear file, he said that Iran is effectively operating as if it were no longer an NPT member. And he goes on and added that Tehran is debating whether to leave the NPT altogether. and that has some pretty significant ramifications. What can you tell us about the status of this inside Iran?
We didn't have to be here. I mean, we were a part of the NPT. We accepted in the 2015 nuclear deal, which I was a critic of. I think we gave too many concessions. We were part of we accepted a deal where the monitoring in Iran was more than the rest of the world combined. And Trump threw that out the window. And the Americans were not abiding by their commitments there either. Obama was violating his commitments, but the Iranians continued to implement the deal. So Trump tore that up. And then we know Joe Kent, who's a friend of yours, who's been on your show, he said repeatedly that the Iranians were not developing a nuclear weapon. Tulsi Gabbard, who again you know, she said under oath Iran was not developing a nuclear weapon. The International Atomic Energy Agency has said for years that there's no evidence that Iran is developing a nuclear weapon. Even the United States has admitted that since 2003, Iran has not been developing a nuclear weapon. And before 2003, there's no evidence that Iran was developing a nuclear weapon because the IAEA has never said such a thing. So the United States has been pushing Iran towards where we are now. And remember, this is the deputy foreign minister saying it. It's not the guards or like these so-called hardliners or whatever. So he's saying that, look, if this is where they're going to push us, then we are basically on the way out of the NPT with these policies. So Trump has basically done the exact opposite of what he said he would do.
And I'm sorry. So I mean that the question is, if you get out of the NPT, then will they be going to development of a nuclear weapon?
I don't think this means the same thing, but I think it creates more leverage. I mean, why did Iran enrich uranium at 60% in the first place? In the United States, in Fox News, they say, oh, they made that. Why did they do it? It's because they want a nuclear weapon. No, it's nonsense. The Iranians, from the very beginning, when Trump left the nuclear deal, the Iranians waited for 2 years. After 2 years, they restarted the nuclear program. And then when the West still refused to lift all those sanctions, they began enriching at higher levels to put pressure as leverage at the negotiating table. They've been explicit about this. So these people lie when they say Iran is on its way to building a nuclear weapon. But if Iran leaves the NPT, obviously they move closer to that scenario. But that doesn't mean Iran actually wants to do it. In any case, this is U.S. aggression. This is Netanyahu and Trump and the Zionists. They're pushing the region towards collapse, and they're effectively pushing Iran in a direction which is closer to the exit door of the NPT.
And last question here, just in 30 seconds or less. What if Iran does pull out of the NPT and Israel says that's an existential threat to us, they're going to get the bomb, we're going to use one of our nukes? What if that happens?
I think that would be the end of Israel. The world won't tolerate this. The world is already disgusted with the Israeli regime. It's already lost its legitimacy in the eyes of people across the world. Everyone will start developing nuclear weapons across the region and perhaps beyond. And Iran is a huge country. Mountains everywhere, as you pointed out. If Israel went in that direction, all Iran would have to do was move to build one or two, and that's more than enough. And we see Iran's conventional capabilities. It's defeated the United States and the Israeli regime at war. So that would be the most stupid, and that would be bring an end to many things. But hopefully these insane Zionists and these ethno-supremacists and the neocons in the United States, they won't be that